Have you ever found yourself trapped in the same painful cycle again and again, though different faces, different places, yet the same outcome? Why do we sabotage ourselves, knowing full well the pain it will bring? You are not alone. This is not weakness. It's a pattern coded deep within the psyche, shaped by trauma, emotion, and memory. Today, we embark on a journey, not just of understanding, but of liberation. Because once you become aware of the pattern, you can begin to change it. This is the psychology of your repeated mistakes, and the way out begins now. The illusion of free will. You feel like you're in control. You wake up, you choose, you act. But what if most of your choices are just echoes of your childhood, of what you believed love looked like, of how you learned to protect yourself when no one else would? The mind builds shortcuts, neural pathways designed to keep you safe. So when something feels familiar, even if it's painful, you return to it. Why? Because the brain values familiarity over happiness. It prefers certainty even if it hurts. So you chase partners who resemble the parent who neglected you. You sabotage success because comfort feels like struggle. You say, I chose this, but often it chose you. Free will doesn't begin at the moment of choice. It begins with awareness of what's influencing it. Emotional memory, your unseen script. Every painful experience you've survived has left an emotional imprint. And these imprints, they don't fade with time. They wait in silence until something, a voice tone, a smell, a glance, wakes them up. Suddenly you're 32, but reacting like you're 7. Why? Because the emotion isn't from now, it's from then. And when we haven't healed, the past hijacks the present. You're not overreacting, you're reliving. The patterns you repeat are your psyche's way of trying to rewrite an old ending. But pain isn't a puzzle to solve through repetition. It's a wound to be acknowledged and integrated. Until then, the same scenes will play, with different actors. The comfort of familiar pain. Here's the paradox. We fear change, even when we are miserable. Why? Because pain, feels safer than joy you don't trust. There's a strange comfort in suffering you've rehearsed for years. It becomes your identity. I always mess up. I attract the wrong people. I'm just not good enough. These aren't facts. They're emotional truths, born from years of repetition. And so, you self-sabotage. You reject love. You delay progress. Because happiness feels unfamiliar, and unfamiliar feels unsafe. To truly change, you must risk discomfort. You must walk away from the version of yourself who survived, and toward the one who is ready to live. The inner child, still in control, no matter how grown you are. Part of you stopped growing the moment you were first hurt. That 6-year-old who learned to hide emotions, the 12-year-old who felt invisible, the 17-year-old who lost faith in love. They're still there, still protecting you, still making your decisions. They taught you to close off, to be strong, to expect abandonment, and now, as an adult, you call it standards or independence. But it's still fear. Healing begins when you stop dismissing that inner child. Listen to them. Let them grieve. Let them feel safe with you. Only then can you lead with your adult self whole, aware, and capable of choosing differently. Trauma as a compass, but in reverse. Unhealed trauma doesn't just sit quietly in your psyche. It becomes a compass, but one that points away from healing. You avoid intimacy, not because you don't want love, but because love once meant pain. You chase validation, not because you're selfish, but because you never learned self-worth. You overthink every decision, not because you're indecisive, but because being wrong once cost you everything. Your behaviors make sense. They are intelligent responses to past harm. But what once protected you now imprisons you. The question is no longer, Why am I like this? It's what happened to me that taught me to survive this way. Repetition compulsion. The mind's desperate loop. Freud called it repetition compulsion, a subconscious drive to recreate the same wounds in hopes of a different ending. You pick people who mistreat you. You procrastinate. When opportunity knocks, you quit just before the breakthrough, not because you want failure, but because you're trying to master the original pain. You keep going back to the battlefield, thinking if you can just win this time, the past will dissolve. But it never does, because healing doesn't come from repetition. It comes from recognition. When you stop reenacting your pain, you finally make space to feel it, and then to release it. How the ego preserves the pattern. The ego's job is to protect you, but it doesn't care about truth-only consistency. So when you begin to change, the ego resists. It whispers, "You're being unrealistic. You don't deserve better. This is who you are." It prefers chaos. It understands to peace that feels unfamiliar. Your ego is not evil. It's outdated. It's running on programming from childhood, from wounds that were never your fault. Growth threatens the ego. That's why it panics when you try to evolve. To transcend your patterns, you must learn to observe your ego and act from a deeper place. Awareness, the first real power. You cannot change what you refuse to see. Most people live their entire lives reacting, not realizing they're stuck in inherited scripts. But the moment you become aware, a fracture appears in the cycle. You notice your triggers. You pause before reacting. You question your beliefs. That space between stimulus and response is where freedom lives. Awareness isn't comfortable. It strips you bare. It shows you how much of your life has been on autopilot. But it's also your first real power. Because once you see the pattern, you are no longer at its mercy. Choosing differently. The quiet revolution. People expect transformation to be dramatic. But real change is subtle, invisible even. It's saying no to the familiar chaos. It's texting a friend instead of isolating. It's taking one breath before you react. These aren't small choices. They are rebellions. Tiny revolutions that say, "I will not repeat the pain that shaped me." Progress doesn't always feel good. Sometimes healing feels like loss, because you're leaving behind a version of yourself that you've known for years. But with every conscious choice, you reclaim your life, not in grand moments, but in quiet acts of defiance against your old programming. Integration, becoming the author of your life. Healing is not about erasing the past. It's about integrating it, so it no longer controls you. Your wounds become wisdom. Your mistakes become mirrors. Your pain becomes purpose. And from that place, you write a new story, one where you're not a victim of patterns, but the author of presence, of choice, of awakening. You no longer ask, "Why do I keep doing this?" Instead, you declare, "I see myself now. I understand. I choose again." The cycle breaks, not with noise, but with consciousness. And that is the beginning of freedom. Maybe it's not a flaw. Maybe it's a message. Every repeated mistake is a lesson unlearned, a truth still buried in your past. But now you've seen the pattern. Now, you are no longer asleep. And once we become aware, we are no longer doomed to repeat. You're not broken. You're becoming.